Welcome to Blue Iron IP's Patent Myth podcast. I'm Russ Krajak, your host, and the author of Investing in Patents, as well as a soon-to-be-released book called Startup IP Strategy. Blue Iron provides financing for patents, so we look at startup companies and their assets, the patent assets, as having value and trying to figure out how do we create value with those assets. Our view is that 95% of all the patents out there are worthless, and the percentage might even be higher for startup companies. Our aim is to take down some of those existing patent myths and put in better practices so that startups could do a much better job with their IP. So in this episode, we're going to talk about willful blindness and why I really force myself to think about data-driven patents and not let the emotions get a hold of me. So I didn't know how to label this myth. And I wanted to talk about willful blindness and inventors. And it's really not a myth. It's reality. And I wanted to talk about a couple examples of it. So one of my old engineering bosses called me a few years ago. And, you know, at this point in life, I was a patent attorney. And he had a family member that was investing in a really wacky invention. And the inventor was making a whole bunch of claims that bordered on perpetual motion machine type claims. And perpetual motion machines are like the bane of of being a patent attorney. Seems like perpetual motion machine guy calls me, you know, every month, maybe two, where they got some kind of new energy field thing that, you know, in all of human history and the millions and millions of experiments that have ever been done, nobody ever saw this before, kind of thing. You know, like, oh, you know, this persona I've seen before, and you see them a lot. You know, they're the, you know, the crazy inventor in the garage kind of guy. And some of them are super, well, anybody who's going down that road is usually very, 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 emphatic and decisive. And, you know, boy, they really got their, you know, they're really trying to be convincing. Well, this perpetual motion machine guy got my old engineering boss's son-in-law's brother or something involved. And the boss's son-in-law's brother is the investor who's going to front money for perpetual motion machine guy. And they talked to my engineering boss and and asked him, "Do you like this invention? Does it work? Is it manufacturable? Is it a good thing? What do you think?" And he looked at it and said, "This is a disaster. Run. Take your money and run." And his son-in-law's brother didn't want to do that. He wanted to believe that this was going to be the next revolution in electric motors that was just going to, you know, be better than every electric motor that has ever been out there. Even though there's been countless thousands or more, tens of thousands of engineers whose job has been over the last century to figure out a more efficient motor, and they've tried thousands of different ways. Whatever. Peace on that. You found something better than all those guys. Anyway, my old boss sent him to me and said, "Please be straight with them and send them on their way." And so I took a meeting with investor and inventor. Inventor was crazy. He was just selling this thing with, just selling his heart out there and telling me how wonderful it's going to be. And I'm like, second law of thermodynamics, you're not going to, gazintas have to equal gazoutas, and, you can't get more out than what you're putting in. And but it's so much more efficient. And it combines all this stuff that, is so much more efficient than all these other non-related regimes. And he's drawing all these conclusions that they're completely wrong. But at the same time, the thing actually was an electric motor. It actually was something that, if you put the magnets on there and, put the electromagnets on and the fixed magnets, the stator and the rotor and all that, you kind of could get something that worked. And it rotated in this funny manner and whatever. And so I told him, I think, I can't do anything about this perpetual motion stuff because that doesn't exist. You're wrong there. But you actually have kind of a weird motor, and you probably could get a patent on that. But I would not get a patent. This is not nearly as good as you think it is. It's terrible. Don't do it. It's terrible. Okay. But, they wanted me to be their patent attorney, and being an attorney requires two different things. One is you have to have a fiduciary responsibility to the client. So you have to tell them as much truth as you can. You can tell this is a dumb invention. I don't think I use the word dumb, but I'm like, this is not a good invention. Board is on perpetual motion. You can't make these statements. This is not going to, this is going to be just a very expensive electric motor. And it's, I don't believe that it's going to, make all these claims that you have. Oh, but we really want a patent so that we could go build one. And but I'm also their agent. And, this is a conflict where I'm your agent and you want a patent on a perpetual motion machine. I am legally, ethically, and morally bound to write a patent application on your perpetual motion machine, even though I know it will never work. I'm legal, morally, and ethically bound to write that patent application and send it to the patent office. So I had tried to say, no, this is awful. Don't do it. This doesn't work. How about this thing? And the inventor was not an engineer with a PhD in physics. He was a telephone sales guy. And he had this, he had studied physics on his own, and it's just awful. But, I'm conflicted because I'm telling them no, but they really want this. And so the way I thought I'd deal with that is, he said, what's it going to cost you to write a patent application on that? And I do everything on a fixed fee. I don't do the hourly rate thing. And as an aside, I'll mention this just for fun, but when people call and they're not very pleasant on the phone, and I think they're going to be a painful client. Well, I tack this thing onto their bill called, kind of the pain and suffering fee. I have a more non-family appropriate name for that itemized thing. It doesn't actually get itemized, but I increase the cost when I think the person's going to be painful. So anyway, having tried to dodge around saying a bad word there, I tried to do the same thing. I think, I'm just going to tell them a stupid high number. I'm going to add $5,000 to my normal price, and hopefully they'll just go away. And much to my horror, I quote them the price, I put the extra amount in, and the investor reaches down in his briefcase, literally pulls out his checkbook, opens it up, and writes me a check for the full amount right there, then and there. And I just about died. Uh, I had to write a patent application, so I did the best I could. His thing was so way out there that the patent actually got granted on the first office action, first action allowance, which, that means I wrote claims that were, they weren't ultra broad or anything. They focused on his invention. And I had to call my old boss back and apologize up and down that, I told him what I did, but he's like, well, if they want to spend the money, then that's just the way it is. But that willful blindness is something that is, it pervades, every human has that. Everybody in our society, has this willful blindness in some way, shape, or form. But it really comes out in some of these patent-related issues. And I'll give you another example. Okay, this one is about a company called Tropicana. You've probably heard of them. They make orange juice. And Tropicana got a patent for orange juice in the 1990s. The way I found out about this patent was somebody had some non-patent blogger ran across this somehow and put some clickbaity headline out there that said, Tropicana got a patent on orange juice. I've been drinking it for a long time, and how do they get a patent on orange juice? And why did that happen? And it went on and on and on. It completely botched all the anything about patents or patent laws or whatever. But the truth is, Tropicana got a patent on orange juice. And what it was not from concentrate orange juice. Not from concentrate was kind of, they developed this process of making fresh squeezed orange juice. And this was if you remember way back it might have been mid 90s when Tropicana came out with the pure premium orange juice. And it was really good. It was fresh, not from concentrate. And the way they made this was really interesting. And the patent actually is really fascinating because what they did was they tracked a bunch of different varieties of oranges as they ripen at near the end of the season when they're ready to be harvested. And each variety ripened at a different time. So some ripened early, some ripened late. And during that ripening phase, as they got to peak ripeness and then a little bit after, they measured the color number for each variety, the sugar content, and the Brix to acid ratio, or the acid to sugar ratio, bitterness, I guess, the shorthand form of it. They measured it for all these different varieties for looks like 2 years. There's 2 years worth of data in there. They put all this stuff in their patent application. All of the all of the measurements that they took, and the formulas that they used to figure, well, we want 10% of this variety at this time and 70% of that variety, and so on and so forth. And then a month later, we're going to switch that around to something else. They had everything in the patent application, everything. It was really fascinating read. The problem is that when you look at the claims of the patent, the claims say something to the tune of up to 99% of fresh orange juice, and then at least 1% of stored orange juice. So 99% fresh and 1% stored. And the stored orange juice, was, kind of their way to get through the high points and low points of the year when demand would be up and they have a lot of, or vice versa, where they have a lot of juice but not a lot of demand, or back and forth. But the problem is they had this thing of at least 1% stored orange juice. And I ask you, could you go to the grocery store and buy the competitor's not from concentrate orange juice and bring it back to the lab and separate out that 1% stored orange juice from fresh? The answer is no. I mean, it's just ridiculous. There's no way that you could ever measure how much stored orange juice is in there, because it's indistinguishable from fresh, right? For all practical purposes. So what they did, okay, and let's put this in context, okay? Orange juice has had two big innovations, okay? There's a bunch of extra oranges way back in, World War II time, and somebody invented a way of concentrating orange juice. And it was out in California, there's a surplus of oranges, so they squeezed them all, and then they concentrated them. And from the 1940s until the 1990s, that's all the orange juice there ever was. Everything was concentrated. They'd go through the harvest, they'd squeeze all the orange juices, they'd concentrate it, and they'd store it, and then bring it out, as necessary during the year. And, I remember as a kid growing up where my mom would have that, can of frozen orange sludge that would come out of the freezer, and she'd mix it with water, and we had orange juice. That's all we knew growing up. And here comes Tropicana with the second major innovation in a century. Okay, I cannot explain that this is the biggest invention that happened in their industry in a half century. It is huge. Okay, and if you and they were completely right. If you go to the orange juice section now, all the good stuff, all the premium brands, all the high-end stuff is not from concentrate. And the best juices you ever taste is the not from concentrate orange juice. I mean, Tropicana hit it out of the park with this invention. Maybe. Except that patent was completely unenforceable. It was completely unenforceable because it was not detectable. They went through that whole process, 2 years of painful data collection, of all kinds of, figuring all this out, and all this R&D and all this wonderful stuff to capture the most innovative thing that has happened in their industry in a half century. And they gave it all away with lousy claims. They gave it all away with claims that were completely undetectable. And what happened here? Okay, I can only imagine what happened. But here's my guess, and I have no data to support this, but having been in a big company before, I kind of understand how this kind of thing would happen. Well, Inventor probably, somebody came up with the idea, what would it really take if we did this, if we got rid of this whole concentration thing and, try to not from concentrate? What would that mean? How would that work? What somebody had that grain of an idea. And then somebody, it might have been that same person, or it might have been somebody else who says, oh, here's how I'd kind of implement it. And then we start doing a lot of work on it. And it starts to gain a lot of traction internally, politically. the R&D manager is really excited about it because he's finally got something, something it could be a game changer for their industry, something where they can charge double for this really special orange juice. And they do. It not from concentrate is the expensive orange juice, higher margin. It's still orange juice, but higher margins. And so that probably got some traction, in the R&D area. And the engineering manager said, wow, that's going to be really great. Wow, that's such a great idea. Let's get a patent on it. And then, wow, they go to the next level up in the management. Well, we're getting a patent on a really cool product that's going to change the industry. And then that moved up the stream, and then the CEO finally got wind of this great revelation that's going to happen, and went to the board, and the CEO is telling the board, hey, we got a patent pending on this brand new product that's going to be $1 billion product for us. And everybody in the chain has this vested interest in getting a patent and having that plaque on the wall, thinking that it's really going to do something. They had all the money in the world. There's a super successful company. At the time, I think Tropicana had just been purchased by CocaCola for some number of billions of dollars. And, wonderful things were happening at Tropicana. The patent attorneys, they had money for the best white shoe, big law firm, best patent attorneys ever. And they had everything in place, and nobody said, is this a good thing to get a patent on? Nobody said, you know what, maybe this would be like the formula for Coke. Maybe this should be like our biggest trade secret. And we just roll it out there at, $5 a gallon instead of $3. And people try it and like, wow, this is really wonderful. And all our competitors would be left in the dust. Nobody would know what does not for concentrate mean? Well, well, this is fresh squeezed, and we have fresh squeezed and nobody else does. Instead, what they did is they took the single greatest invention that they ever had. They wrapped it up in a bow, and they said to all their competitors, this is exactly how we're doing it. The 2-year lead that they had in this business was completely eroded by a patent that they never should have gotten. Okay? But once that ball got rolling inside of Tropicana, I can just imagine that it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And it got to the patent attorney, and the patent attorney had to do what they had to do to get the patent allowed. And getting it allowed meant they had to put this limitation in the claim, and killed the patent, killed their competitive advantage with one little line in the claim, gave away 2 years of hard work with one little line in the claim. Tropicana actually tried to enforce this patent. They did some continuations and stuff. They tried to enforce the patent. They sued a couple competitors who looked at their patent and copied everything that they can find in there. And the patent's unenforceable. And Tropicana lost in a couple lawsuits way back then trying to enforce the patent. So not only did they completely erode their 2-year head start, not only did they, suffer the indignity of giving all their R&D to somebody else, to their competitors, but when they went to enforce it, they lost and got kicked in the head there too. So all this happened because nobody stopped to say, is this a good idea? Everybody had some little piece of the pie, some little vested interest in, it'd be really great to get a patent. And the patent attorney's certainly not going to turn down big time work from a big time multi-billion-dollar client. Oh no, we're going to do whatever they want. Just like me with that crazy electric motor, they're going to do it even if it hurts the company. And nobody, the willful blindness that happened all the way through that. And I don't know if it's willful blindness or just, they just didn't know. They didn't know to ask. They didn't know that, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. They were innocent in this and just thought that was the best course of action. Turns out it was not the best course of action. Turns out that the patent attorneys, I don't know if they had a conversation with their client, the Tropicana, and said, look, these claims are not detectable. They probably did not. That's not typically how it works. They typically get a patent, no matter how bad the patent is. When you get a patent, you send it to the client and you tell them, congratulations, you have a patent. All you hear in the back is champagne corks popping and people celebrating. And nobody stops to consider, did you just give away the single greatest invention in a half century or not? They don't care about that. They're just happy at the time. In any event, this kind of wishful thinking or willful blindness or whatever you want to call, the fantasy of a broad patent that covers some huge invention. The devil is in the details. One little line in one claim, or it turned out to be one little line in every independent claim, but that one little line, at least 1% stored orange juice, killed that whole patent, killed that whole invention, killed their competitive advantage. All that stuff happens. And these are really good people. They're smart people. They're intelligent. They're well paid. They're, the top of the line of everything. And they still make these kind of mistakes. And, when I'm making the assertion that 95% of patents out there are worthless, this is one of them. This is an example of what happens out there. And it happens regularly. And if it's going to happen with, a multi-billion-dollar company like Tropicana, how much more likely is it going to happen to a startup company with, a young entrepreneur who's just, wet behind the ears, getting started, doesn't have a lot of experience, hasn't been through the patent process before, or, hasn't been, they're just not part of their experience base. How much more likely is these kind of problems going to happen with a startup entrepreneur, when they happen all the time at big companies? We as angel investors have a responsibility, at least to our own investment, to hopefully, raise the awareness and ask the questions and just make sure that the inventor, the entrepreneur, are thinking through these things. And somebody needs to be, the kid in the Aesop's fable who says the emperor has no clothes. Somebody needs to raise the alarm on a lot of these things and question whether or not patents are appropriate, because in a lot of cases, patents are not. Tropicana should have kept all this stuff as a trade secret and never let it see the light of day. But for whatever reason, they started down the patent path, and it was not as good an outcome as they would have wished. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this discussion, and feel free to ping me or give me comments or feedback on it. Thanks again for listening. Well, thanks for listening. I'm Russ Krajak, CEO of Blue Iron IP. We're a patent finance company where we'll make 50 to 100K investments in startup companies to get them decent patent portfolios. And then we'll do loans against patents at $2 to $5 million for later stage companies that have some revenue. You can find me at blueironip.com. You can pick up my book, Investing in Patents, available on Amazon. We're always looking for new deals to finance and syndication partners with angel or venture firms. And please feel free to get in touch with me. And I look forward to chatting with you.